Right, so obviously I want to start by giving a bit of an apology for the lateness of this video. As you will see in my regular intro, I'm like, oh, I missed a week, and then I missed an extra couple of days. So basically, I had my stuff all filmed for this video. I went downstairs to go and put it on my external hard drive and found that everything was corrupted. I've recovered some stuff, but not everything. But most of the stuff that I couldn't recover from the hard drive using a recovery tool, I can download from elsewhere. So thankfully, we should be okay. But I wanted to start off by letting you know, and also you can see that I've done 2 separate loads of editing with this because when I moved everything over onto my new hard drive, I obviously lost some stuff, and I thought rather than trying to wrangle with what I have and sort some stuff out, because I did put one edited version of this video onto a memory stick, but it got muddled about when I put that on my new hard drive, so I'm just re-editing, and I wanted to say thank you for being patient. Things should be back to normal soon. I'll still be doing all the stuff in the order I said I would be at the end, but thank you all for just bearing with me. Hopefully we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming very soon. Mwah. Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. I'm sorry for missing another week. I'm aware, but my brain fell out a little bit once again, but we are hopefully getting that sorted soon-ish. I say soon-ish because I went private, finally got a real ADHD diagnosis rather than a bunch of doctors being like, yeah, sounds like you have ADHD, can't wait for you to get to a specialist. And I'm like, 3 years later, finally went private, got that sorted, waiting for the letter that I can take to my GP, be like, please start me on a course of medication, and I'm sure I'll wait another 3 years for that to get sorted. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. I'm here to just say my brain's been a little bit away. Hopefully that will be sorted as soon as I can. I have an itch on my back that I don't know if I can reach to scratch. I could go me. Also, I think my hair's changed since my last video. Yes, it almost definitely has. Third thing, I'm not wearing glasses, so for this video I might not be able to see as much as usual, but I've got my ring light on and my makeup looks good, so I don't want the reflection on my glasses to take away from the fact that you can see how good my makeup looks today. So, I mean, I've had this done all day, but it is done a little bit because of a video I'm filming later. Now, I'm not wearing lipstick because I can't be bothered, so I just put on some balm earlier today. It's probably not on there anymore. I don't care. This is the important thing. Shall we get on to what we're supposed to be talking about? It wouldn't be one of my videos without being a little bit rambly. Mainstream, multiple authors, incandescent publishing. The way I'm going to do this is I am literally going to go through to each story and give my opinion. Hello, editing me here. So as you will see later, I got 2 titles mixed up in my head, so you will see here the review I'm giving is actually for a review, not for a review, for a short story that comes later on, just so you're aware in advance that I got things mixed up because I'm a silly boy. So first up is Home Time by Kathy Hoyle. I'm not doing synopses for pretty much any of these, apart from if I feel it necessary. It's mostly going to be kind of quick fire because there's, I think, somewhere between 30 and 40 stories in here, so doing a synopsis of all of them doesn't feel entirely necessary. So yeah, first one is Home Time by Kathy Hoyle, and it is a great way to open the book. It really captured my imagination. I love stuff that's a little bit magic, a little bit is it magic kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense, where you know that you get that sometimes in books where you can't work out if this is an actual magical thing or it's no, this is just a human problem, but it feels a bit magic, and it's got some stuff about like that generational thing going on in there as well, trying to like protect your kids from stuff that you did when you were their age, and I love all of that kind of stuff. It is just a top tier way to get the book started. Next up we have Giant. I'm going to say by Lou Sit, Lui for the first name and Sit for the surname. Apologies for any mispronunciations, and I will put that apology for the rest of the book because there are a few names I'm not familiar with in terms of pronunciation there. So my apologies. I have only seen these names, I've obviously not heard them. This one was terrifying. I bloody loved it. I wasn't expecting a little bit of spook, a little bit of horror in there, but there was something very visceral about parts of this. There's a lot of dream quality stuff to it, seemingly linked to mental health as well, sort of the types of mental health that deal with delusions and that kind of thing, or maybe I'm just reading into that, but that's how I felt specifically with the ending. It felt like it was linked to that, but I can't be certain. I think I have a little bit of sunburn on my back because it's itching so bad. I also have it on my nose, but you can't tell because I'm wearing blush. Anyway, back to Giant. Yeah, it is very visceral in parts. It has this feel to it of when you're in those dreams where you're having a bad dream, you're having a nightmare, then you wake up and then you realise you haven't woken up. It has that quality to it, which is always super spooky because there's something very particular about those kind of nightmares. The waking up and then realising you're not waking up is something that very frequently happens to me when I am having bad dreams. So yeah, I really felt that. Next up we have In the Shell Museum by Padrika Tarrant, one of the really short ones, only a couple pages. I didn't get it, but I enjoyed it, even if it was a little confusing. It has an air of slightly confusing poetry to it. I definitely feel like this is one of the ones where this just feels like it's not for me, rather than it not being particularly good, which I'm a reviewer. There are some stories in this which I didn't think were particularly good. In the Shell Museum, I think this is just something that isn't quite for me, but I can see the audience this is for. Like I said, it's got that prose poetry feel to it. I'm just not a huge poetry fan in general. There's some stuff that I like, of course, but on the whole, this one just wasn't for me. Next up, we have Easy Peelers by Lisa Goldman. This one, I didn't get it at first. I don't mean the metaphor. It's a metaphor clearly about, well, not necessarily clearly at first, but on the whole, it seems to be about immigration, and I think that's why I didn't really get it at first, just because that's not something that I've ever had experience with. So, I think this is one of those stories where I go, yes, this is an enjoyable story, but somebody who has had a life either as an immigrant or with parents who are immigrants would maybe connect to this a little bit more and maybe get more out of it than I did, which was just the simple enjoyment of a good story. Oh, I have got confused. What was the first story? Right, I got confused with titles. So the review I gave of Home Time earlier is not the one I was thinking. The Home Time by Kathy Hoyle, the one that opens it, it's still brilliant, but I'm not good with names and titles and I should have given it a quick skim. This is actually more about workers' strikes and things like that. It's not the Slightly Magic one, which I'll get to in a minute. Yes, Home Time, it's about strikes and family dramas and trying to deal with that when you're a child, and it is brilliant, and it is still a brilliant way to open it. My apologies, I'm getting confused with The Spinney by Galen Gould. So go back and enjoy the review I gave when I said the story that opened the book. That's actually my review of that. Next up, we have The Initiation by Badisha. Now, I really didn't think this one was... There's always a part of me that just generally doesn't like, because these are all independent authors. This isn't, being published. This isn't... Everybody should be reviewed properly, but there's always a little pang of something when you've got me going, I don't think this was very good, but I kind of don't. But I'm being objective here. This isn't just, I don't like it, therefore I don't think it's good. Which I did think that, sorry, there is something at my feet, which I would rather it wasn't. So I'm just going to do a bit of shuffling. At first I thought that it might not be for me, and that's just what's going on. But as I went through it, I realised that there's just a real pacing issue here. So it somehow does feel too short and too long at the same time. I feel like, given a larger word count, the story being told here could be expanded upon and explained better. I think it needs more. But unfortunately, because it is much shorter, 45 through to 55, so it's only 10 pages long, it just doesn't hit the way it feels like it's supposed to. It feels like it's dragging because it feels like it's missing bits. And I don't... that sounds like it doesn't make sense. It sounds a bit like an oxymoron. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't think the writing itself is bad, but it feels like when I was writing some of my Bad Rep Book Club reviews, the earlier drafts sometimes read better because they were longer. Because once I cut it down to fit a word count, it just felt a bit choppy and it didn't have my voice to it in the same way. There's a similar feeling with this. It feels like it's dragging because it feels like I am being told a story where I have information, but I don't have that information, and it just misses the mark for me, does this one. And I feel like the story itself could be very enjoyable. The final passage, where it's got one of those scenes, I love it in films in particular, and it's described well in here, so I enjoy it here, but there's something about this being visual, where you've got somebody who's magic and is linked to emotion, and that emotion gets pent up, and then boom, magic shit happens. That scene at the end, great. I thought that worked really well. But on the whole, I don't think this story just works. It feels like it's lacking. This is something that I feel like could be worked on into a longer story and could make a lot more sense. Next up, we have Happy Ending by Golmush Noor. Again, my apologies about name pronunciations there. This one was not my favourite, but I thought it was interesting to read. I liked the little bits of it feels like somebody young first realising that they're gay. I always like that, and that word is never even used. It's all these subtle little things that are just like, I am noticing this. This is a female protagonist, so you know she's seeing girls for the first time. There's this one woman there, and she's not wearing the same. Oh, what was the? There is a particular. So this they're on the pilgrimage to Mecca. That's what this is about. Well, that's not necessarily what it's about, but that is what is taking place throughout the story. This is a Muslim protagonist, and that was the word I was trying to think of. So there is a woman there on this huge trip that our protagonist sees and realises that she's not in a chador. Again, if I'm not saying things right, I've only ever seen them written down. But from what I gathered, because I did have to look it up, a chador is like the full head to foot, and I believe face covered. At the very least, it's obviously hair's covered and it's full body and it's that. But this girl is just wearing a headscarf and like high street clothes. I was trying to think of I was going to say normal, and that is not the right word to use, but she's wearing like high street clothes kind of thing rather than traditional clothes, if that makes sense. And there's this idolization, I want to say, from our protagonist to this woman, and there's also these little talks of our protagonist's friend from home and how she wants to go back to her just because of these little feelings of when their hands touch and this connection between them and all that. And it's a really interesting story. It's not necessarily, like I said, it's not one of my favourites, but I did think it was interesting while I was reading it. It's definitely one that kept me hooked. Just, I don't know, it's always hard to explain, where it's just like, yes, this is a story I enjoyed. Doesn't have to be a favourite, but I would happily read it again. Next up, we have The Beach by Hedy Hume, who happens to be a wonderful friend of mine who I went to university with. This is the story from this collection that I did see beforehand, for obvious reasons. I actually helped proofread it a little bit, so I did contribute, just saying. But it had been long enough between me doing that and me reading this for the most part. I had vague memories of what it was about. I mean, obviously it's called The Beach, but that being I remember it being to do with a particular place. I mean, I couldn't remember at the time, but it's Abergowyd, but I knew there was a Welsh beach, a beach town that was linked to it, but I couldn't remember much. And I knew that it was a trans story, but I have a poor memory in general. And I read this, I believe, the first time when I was still doing uni work, so I had a lot of things going on at that time. But, like I said, I have read this before, and I loved it then, and I love it now. I think it's wonderful. I mean, for a start, yes, I am a little bit biased, but I would still review it as I'm gonna review it. I got to break the news to my friend that the page 69 is falling on their story. Am I a grown up? Absolutely not, and nor do I ever plan on being. I mean, trans stories are generally gonna resonate with me if they're written well, as this one is, so there's always that little wonderful thing. But what I particularly like about this is it's the idea of a found family, and because I am gay, I love a found family story. I think it is something that we all generally seem to fall for in some kind of way, and yeah, and the dyeing the hair red and the name stuff, I love it. I think it's wonderful. Going Up, Going Down by Nathan Evans. This one, like Happy Ending, this is one of those that really enjoyed it while I was reading it. Can't say it's one of my favourites, but I had a bloody good time nonetheless. I really like the stuff about class in this one. You've got somebody who is from the Midlands, who's now, I want to say Oxford. Yes. Yeah, at Oxford, and, you know, dealing with coming out. This is, you know, do we have a year on this? Sorry, I'm gonna go quiet for a bit and I'll probably cut that out. I think it's in the, like, 80s, 90s, I'm not sure. I can't recall quickly, and I don't want to just end up skimming through reading the whole thing. But, you know, this is at a point where you have to kind of sneak off to find the gay society, and, you know, he's dealing with the class struggle of, yeah, this guy's really cool, but he's also an absolute toff. He'll never understand me because we're just two very different people. And, you know, it's just, yeah, like I said, not necessarily my favourite, but a bloody good time was had by me. Next up, we have Twickenham by Neil Bartlett. This one was one of my favourites. It was really interesting. It had me hooked. For a start, similar with the last one. I mean, I always do enjoy reading stories where you've got this idea of, you know, being gay before it was, on the whole, okay. This is set in 74. It's, you know, barely legalised in the UK. I believe it was 67 or 68, and I know I'm a bad gay and I don't know my history very well, but off the top of my head, that's not something I'm actively thinking about. I want to say it was 67. I'll put it up on the screen. At this point, it is a little over, in terms of the story, a little over 5 years of this being legalised, and this being a story of somebody who's young, like 15, finding a much older guy, and it feels like a story of them recalling it to somebody. Yeah, I think that's what really hooked me, is there's this feeling throughout, especially right near the beginning, that they're recalling it to somebody. And because of that, there's almost this part of me throughout where you get this hope. It's like, oh, you're going to realise that this is, like, no matter how good it felt, that this wasn't a good thing. This character's like 15. The guy he ends up finding is like minimum twice his age. And, you know, there's a part of it partway through where he's like, no, it wasn't abusive. And it's like, yes, it was. Just because you didn't feel like it, yes, it absolutely was. And it just... trying to find that line. There we go. We all have to leave our childhood selves behind, of course, to abandon ourselves, and I sometimes wonder if that's why we're all so obsessed with stories that take us back somewhere and then snap round to reveal some terrible wound or abuse that is supposed to then somehow explain everything that ever happened to that person afterwards. Well, just to be clear, this picture of my 15-year-old self involuntarily arching his back in a sun-filled August bedroom is not a picture of abuse at all. Listen to the sounds that I'm making through John's fingers. Long strain notes, playing pianissimo, fingered right up high on the neck of a double bass. They're wonderful, wonderful. Which, just because the sex was good, doesn't mean you were old enough to consent. And there was this part of me throughout this story, and I'm like, oh, I was really hoping by the time you were an adult you'd realise that it was weird just because it was good. But no. Now, had he been 16, I would have gone, this is still weird, but fine. It's technically legal, I guess. I don't like it, but technically it's legal. Now, it wouldn't have been at the time. I understand that. At the time, the age of consent for gay men was 21. That would have been different, but on the whole, you could have gone, oh, he was 16 or even 18, and it would have been less fucking weird. But no, you had to make him underage, even by today's standards, and I think that's very particular, and I think that is an active choice by Neil Bartlett there. So I was very much intrigued by this whole story. Next up, we have Bleach by Neil Lawrence. This one was a little bit unusual in the fact that it felt like a chapter, not a full story. And it was going great up until the final part. And I feel like that's a little bit rude. It does still feel like a short story, but at the same time, the ending just feels like a bit too open-ended. It's not unusual for short stories to feel a little bit unended because you want your reader to imagine what could come next. Almost, but not quite, like that idea of sequel bait kind of thing. It's not necessarily sequel bait, but with short stories compared to longer form novels and novellas, there is a tendency to something a little more open-ended because you haven't been able to spend as much time with your characters. But this one just feels like it stopped a little bit too soon. I would have liked a little more, but I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was good on the whole. Next up, we have Last Visit by Alex Hopkins. This one, don't think stuck out to me in the way that a few of the others did. And that is in a way that is neither a compliment or me being critical of it. It worked, it did what it had to do, but for me, it didn't particularly stick out. I remember the moment where there's a reveal about a school. If you read it, that'll make sense. But on the whole, not quite as memorable as some of the others. It's not a bad thing. Wasn't, memorably bad, but it could. I couldn't tell you what I would have needed to make it stick out to be memorably good either. So, it worked. It did what it had to. Next up, we have a review of A Return by Juliette Jacques. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Juliette spelled as you'd imagine, and Jacques spelled Jacques. don't speak French, so I don't know. This one is not bad, but it's definitely not for me. I certainly have friends who I would recommend this to, and they are the friends that I have that are particular types of movie nerds. I mean, this is about, as far as I've tried looking it up, and as far as I can tell, this is about a fictional film. Like a fictional review, fictional film. But given the way it's written, I feel like I have a few friends that would really enjoy it because of the way it talks about this film. But for me, it just didn't hit the right spots. It's a bit the kind of things I don't like about literary fiction type vibe. That's not it's not a critique of the thing. It's just not for me. That's fine. Not everything is going to be for me, but I'm not going to sit here and go, this is bad, just because I didn't like it. Not everything has to fit every audience. Next up we have Scaffolding by Giselle Lieb. This one was really fucking interesting to read. For a start, I originally thought it was going to be about chronic illnesses, and it has that vibe about it, about having to go back to the doctor and go back to the doctor and go back to the doctor and go back to the doctor, and you don't get anything new ever. If any of you watching do also suffer with any kind of chronic illness, you will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say, even when doctors are actually trying for you, there's fuck all they can do sometimes. I particularly really like, and then it just gets kind of weird and creepy towards the end, and I'm like, did not expect it to go this way, but I'm so glad that it did. I love the kind of poetry aspect to it. So there's this little rhyme that tells the story alongside the actual prose. So I will read the ones on there are 3 on the first 2 pages, and it expands as it goes through. So before each new section, these are the Jones that Jack built, and then this is the skin that lay on the bones that Jack built, and then this is the wound that broke the skin that lay on the bones that Jack built, and it builds on that rhyme as it goes on, and I thought that was really interesting. I don't think I've seen much like that used in prose. That sort of thing is more usually saved for poetry, and I really like the way that it felt like a mixed medium painting but for the page. Dilated Pupil by Ollie Charles. This was hard to read in a good way. It's dealing with trauma, clearly about some kind of essay, and it's rough. It's hard to read. There's, as far as I can recall, there's no assault actually shown, but there's this tense, uncomfortable feeling throughout of something has happened before this, and then the whole scene in the bathroom, it is very uncomfortable to read, but that's not a bad thing in this case. Then we have Sero Sorting, or Zero Sorting, Serosorting, by Justin David. This, for me, I didn't click with it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good, but in that way where I'm just like, this is objectively a good story, but I'm just not personally connecting with it. In that way I've said before, you can't connect with every reader, and this one for me, I have never been a hook up app kind of person, And this feels like it's kind of tailored to the people that are on those kind of apps. It's just not for me, I'll be honest. It May Concern by Keith Jarrett. This one I loved so much, as it was good. Hang on, there's something on my foot, and I appreciate if you weren't on my foot. I've already gone blank. I thought this was so interesting, like the forgetting of the name at the beginning, and as it just goes through, there is this awkward tension throughout, and it's like, this is going somewhere and I'm not sure where. And then it gets to the end where our lead character, I don't think they get a name because it's first person, walks into the guy he's seeing's house, and then spoilers happen, and it is absolutely wonderful. That moment floors me. And I don't know why. It's kind of like, it's not even like, it's not a silly twist. It's a really well done twist, and it's like, oh dear. Oof. Next up, we have Partnering by Aisha Phoenix. I felt like that was all going to become one word there. I wanted to make that clear. This one was fun, I'll be honest. I got a little bit of a San Junipero vibe from it. I know that's not just because lesbians. Like, it's not even objectively, this is two women who are interested in each other like that, but there is a clear hint to that towards the end, and I like it. I like the little hints where she's like, yeah, it's like a futuristic setting, and they're dancing, well, our lead character, she's dancing with this robot, and that's like relatively normal. Some people dance with people, some people dance with robots, that's a thing. And our protagonist, she's dancing with this robot, and this guy in particular, he's like, no, but why don't you dance with me, get the feel of a person? She's like, I don't need that, I don't want that. But later on, when he's trying to get her again, this other woman comes in and helps her. And suddenly it's different. She dances with this woman, and it's wonderful. I think there's something very sweet about it. I think it's quite nice. It's a nice bit of respite, because a lot of these stories are a bit dark. Next up, we have The Birdwatchers by Julia Bell. This was a weird one. I liked it, but I want to read it again, because I feel like there were some things that I missed. I think I was reading this one when I was coming to the point where I was about to take a break, because my brain starts going, you're not going to take in any information. So I think I want to read this one again, but I did really enjoy it. It was a little bit odd, but I did certainly, yeah, it was an unusual one, but I did enjoy it, and I want to read it again. Next up, we have Our Kind of Love by Paul McVeigh. Now, on the whole, I thought this was simply a good, interesting story that was captivating, kept me going, but there was this one part in particular, and it's towards the end. Now, I'm not going to spoil what the line is, but our lead character is at a wedding and overhears the father of the groom explaining something to his son. He says something to his son about, how to keep your wife, basically. And it made my fucking skin crawl. And that line certified this story as brilliant, because the rest of it was really good. There's these really tense moments in it. This is set, you know, during the Troubles in Ireland. This is in Northern Ireland, and there's a shootout at one point, which is rough as anything. And there's this particular line about giving someone mouth to mouth, even though there isn't much of a mouth left, or something like that, and that was grim. But that line at the wedding, something about that, just the way it made my skin crawl, really really made me enjoy this story. Next we have The Reluctant Bride by Iqbal Hussein. I don't think I enjoyed this one, but I think it's one I want to give another read. I mean, it shows how often I do take breaks, where it's only a couple stories further ahead, but I think I was just about to take a break again after this one, and I just didn't click with it. But that means there's a good chance, because I was about to take a break, there's a good chance that A, some things didn't stick, and B, there was a good chance I was accidentally skipping bits, because I do that when I need to take a break. I will forget where I was, and then I'll read a bit further down, and I'll just carry on, even if it doesn't really make sense to me. So I want to read that again. I can't give a proper review on that one, I don't think. My apologies. But I found it a little bit confusing at times, but I don't want to necessarily put that on Iqbal Hussein there. That might just be me. Next up we have The Weight of My Revenge by Kit de Waal, W-A-A-L. This is super short, one page, one paragraph? No, a few paragraphs. It's just very short. It's only about yay big. It's a really short story, and it was very interesting. Not necessarily the most memorable to me, which is a shame, because even though it's short, but like I say, can't win them all. I'm sure for somebody else that would be their favourite. It's not bad, it's not good, it is simply doing it the job of being entertaining. Now, I am never sure if you're supposed to say the C in this phrase, because quite frankly I don't actually know what it means. I just know that it's one of Finn Balor's finishing moves.
Could it be Balor's moment? Balor with a coup de grace to John Cena.
Because it's me, and when don't I bring wrestling into it? So this is coup de grace. I don't think you say the C, right? French people, correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, next up is Coup de Grace by DJ Connell. This one went in a few different directions that I wasn't expecting it to, but it definitely had me hooked. The last scene was a lot, and a lot in a very sudden way. I feel like there could have been a bit more of an idea if that's where it was going. It's not like a surprise twist that doesn't make sense, but at the same time, a little bit more foreshadowing could have been nice. Next up, we have A Life That Isn't Mine to See by Kerry Hudson. I didn't understand this one. I don't know if that's my fault or if that is the author. I don't want to say that it's bad, because I found it confusing, because somebody else might be able to, if I read it again I might get it, or if somebody else read it and go, oh, it's obviously about X, it might just be me. But I found it a little bit confusing. I didn't really get it, so I'm not going to talk about it much further. Next up, Pixmalion by, I want to say Police, P-O-L-I-S, and Loizou, L-O-I-Z-O-U. My apologies for mispronunciations there. This was bloody brilliant. A really good, like, social media story kind of thing, and not just being like, ooh, spooky ooky, social media bad. It's got nuance to it, and I think it's really interesting how social media can be bad from the user end as well, because obviously most social media stories are social media bad because corporation, but also social media can be bad from that human perspective as well. And I like the way that works with this, because it's a bit much, is it, like, the protagonist here at times, and it's all these comparison stuff as well, and it's just, oh, I think it's really good. And that kind of obsession almost that we can form with people who we admire in some way on social media. God, what a title. Next up we have The Dick of Death by Neil McKenna. This was really something. I had no idea where it was going until, well, no, I still never had any idea where it was going. And then it got to, shall we say, the point where the title is talking about, and I was like, oh. And then I'm just very entertaining, but a lot, quite literally a lot. Did I say who that was by? By Neil McKenna. Was that one Neil McKenna? I applaud you, because that was a wild time to be had. I didn't see that. Moving on. Next up we have The Flower Thief by Jonathan Kemp. This was really, really interesting. I know I should figure out little better words. I should find, not similes. Similes is not the word I'm thinking of. Synonyms. I should think of synonyms for the way I talk, but I don't, and I won't, so you're stuck with me. Just think of it as part of the charm of being here on the Fall From Reality channel. It starts off with this almost like, what I always like to describe as old people adventure, which is like that kind of mundane, an old person has a really clear idea of a thing that they want to do and that they should do, and in this case it's a man sitting on a bench trying to figure out who's been stealing flowers from a particular gravestone. And old people adventures is a very particular, like that sedate idea of, you know, he's got a whole story going on in his head, and the whole time he's just a man sitting on a bench, and in the end it's never as exciting as you think. And then it gets to the end, and what he's thinking as he pleasures somebody is grim as shit. And I did not see that one coming at all. Next up we have Notes from a Composer by Chris Simpson. My feelings on this one are similar to, let me get the name correct. My feelings of Notes from a Composer by Chris Simpson are very similar to a review of A Return by Juliet Jacques. It's good, it's not for me, and it has that air of literary fiction to it, so I certainly have people that I would recommend this to. Like I said, my movie friends would like this. And when I say movie friends, obviously lots of people watch movies, but there are some people who are like film people, you know? And if you don't, God, I wish that were me. Sorry, no, I love my friends who love films, but also never been able to get into being a film person and knowing things about directors or whatever. Fucking no. I'll just watch a film and have a good time. Who gives a shit? I say this as somebody with a literature degree, and lots of people would say the same thing about books. I don't know, just watch a book, have a good time, so. Did I say watch a book and have a good time? Read a book and have a good time. It's getting a little bit late. It's dark. It's like 10 p.m. I'm usually in bed right now, and I still have more shit to film. Next up, we have Alignment by Elizabeth Baines. This, for me, fits in the... I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I probably wouldn't read it again. Entertaining, served its purpose, not necessarily my favourite. We're getting towards the end. We are on the final story. So, finally, we have Sunday by Philip Ridley. That story was really quite confusing, but in a deeply intriguing way. It was confusing in a way that I imagine he was going for. It's meant to be a little bit confusing. It's got a lot of stuff about memory in it, and that kind of confusion in an almost dementia kind of way. It felt like a story about dementia. The iguanas thing was odd. I felt like I was missing something a little bit there, but on the whole, I found it was very interesting. I really like that, and a great way to wrap up the collection. Yeah, the stuff about memory. It's stuff about memory, and especially when it feels like it's about dementia, always hits me in a very particular way. I have had family members, particularly in memory, my grandfather, he had Alzheimer's, and that hit in a very particular way with that. And yeah, overall, great collection. There was only really the one which I actively didn't think was good, and the other stuff that I didn't like kind of just felt like I wasn't the audience for it. You know, there was one where I wasn't sure, you've just watched, but you know, there was one where I wasn't sure if it was me or the story, but overall, I really enjoyed that. Now, I will put links to this if you can still get it in the description. I don't know, because sometimes with anthologies like this, you can't. I will find out. Next week, I am not 100% sure what I'm doing. I'm going to, if I can find where my little box is, because I don't know where I've put him. He's here. Right. So for the next few weeks I have a variety of things planned. So I want to do a wrap up of the first half of the year. I have something else planned, which I'm not going to share, because I want it to be a little bit of a surprise when it comes out. That should be in a couple of weeks. I think next week is going to be my wrap up. The week after that should be my surprise, but that might be in a couple of weeks time because there's a few books as a part of that. So shall we have a little route around, figure out what the next book I'm reading from the box will be, so that even if, you know, even if I'm not brain, even if I'm not reading this next week, you will know the next book that I'm going to be reading from the box. I just got one there? Yeah. Get out. Ah, we have Hamnet with an N. Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I will read the blurb for you. On a summer's day in 1596, a young girl in Stratford-upon-Avon takes to her bed with a sudden fever. Her twin brother, Hamnet, searches everywhere for help. Why is nobody at home? Their mother, Agnes, is over a mile away in the garden where she grows medicinal herbs. Their father is working in London. Neither parent knows that Hamnet will not survive the week. Hamnet is a novel inspired by the son of a famous playwright, a boy whose life has been all but forgotten, but whose name was given to one of the most celebrated plays ever written. Obviously, Hamlet. So, this is not usually something I would read. I do not read a whole lot of historical fiction. Kind of for the same reason I don't read a lot of literary fiction. There's a lot of pretentious nonsense going on, I found, in historical fiction. But it's me, and I do love me Shakespeare's, and in particular, I bloody love Hamlet. It's one that I studied when I was in college, and even before then, it was one of my favourites. Maybe that's because, like Hamlet, I'm a depressed gay. Yeah, so this will be coming up soon. We've got another little surprise coming up soon. And yeah, next week, I'll put that. It should be easier for me to do next week. There may be 2 videos. It might be this and the wrap up, just because the wrap up shouldn't take me too long. I want to make that relatively quick fire, though it is me. So wrap up with the books I've read so far, and then, you know, I'll probably, yeah, this on Thursday, and I will do my wrap up on Tuesday. Shall we say that? Yeah. We say that. It's not necessarily going to happen, but that's the plan. Tuesday, wrap up of the year so far. Thursday, Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell, and the Thursday after, we will have the lovely little surprise for you, the intro of which I'm going to film right after this, once I've put my phone on charge for a little while. So, I hope you're having a wonderful night, a wonderful day, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. I will see you all very shortly. Right.